Hello and welcome. In this video, I would like to show you an easy way to remember how to fill in the unit circle, which is everybody's favorite thing to do. There are two tasks that you have to perform. The first is to fill in the coordinates of all of the labeled points, and the second is to fill in all of the angles that are labeled in both degrees and in radians. Here is a filled in unit circle. This is what it will look like after we are done. Now all of these numbers may look like they are random, but they actually follow some fairly simple patterns. So let's look at those. So the first task is to fill in all of the coordinates on the unit circle. And it helps me, at least, to remember this pattern. Minus root 4 over 2, minus root 3 over 2, etc. until we get to root 3 over 2, root 4 over 2. Okay, notice that the numbers inside the square roots are going down while we are negative. And we get to 0, and then they start going back up again. Fairly easy pattern to remember. Okay, and of course, yes, these reduce. Minus root 4 over 2 is minus 1. Minus root 1 over 2 is minus a half. Root 0 over 2 is 0. Root 1 over 2 is a half. And root 4 over 2 is 1. Okay, so all of these numbers that you see here are the numbers that will be on the unit circle. Okay, now which one is the largest? Well, the 1. Okay, so let's start to fill in these coordinates. So I'm going to start at the rightmost point on the unit circle. Okay, we said the largest number in that pattern was a 1. So I'm going to put a 1 there for the x coordinate. And now I'm going to go in that pattern. Okay, remember 1 is the same as root 4 over 2. And I'm going to go counterclockwise this way. Okay, and I'm going to just fill in the x coordinates using that pattern. So the 1 was root 4 over 2. Now we have root 3 over 2, root 2 over 2, root 1 over 2, root 0 over 2, minus root 1 over 2, minus root 2 over 2, minus root 3 over 2, minus root 4 over 2, which is minus 1. And now that I have reached that smallest number in the pattern, I'm going to go back up. Okay, notice we're starting to go back to the right now, and that means x is increasing. So starting at the minus 1, we will start increasing them again. Minus root 3 over 2, minus root 2 over 2, minus root 1 over 2, root 0 over 2, root 1 over 2, root 2 over 2, root 3 over 2, and back to 1. So now we are finished filling in the x coordinates. Now let's move to the y coordinates. Starting at the rightmost point again, notice that the y value is 0. Going counterclockwise again, starting at 0, we're going to increase the y value because we're going up. So after root 0 over 2, root 1 over 2, root 2 over 2, root 3 over 2, root 4 over 2, root 3 over 2, coming back down, root 2 over 2, root 1 over 2, root 0 over 2, now they're becoming negative, minus root 1 over 2, minus root 2 over 2, minus root 3 over 2, minus root 4 over 2, minus root 3 over 2, minus root 2 over 2, minus root 1 over 2, back to 0, root 0 over 2. Alright, we're halfway done. We have finished filling in all of the coordinates. Now it's time to do the angles. First, the degree measures. These are slightly easier than the radian measures because there are no fractions involved. But since there are 360 degrees in a full circle, then if you cut that into 4 pieces, then there are 90 degrees in 1/4 of a circle. Okay, so we're going to fill in the degree measures in 2 stages, keeping the following observations in mind. If you cut each quarter of a circle in half, you're going to get 2 equal pieces, each measuring 45 degrees. And if you cut a quarter into thirds, you'll get 3 equal pieces, each measuring 30 degrees. So we're going to count by 45s first, and then we're going to count by 30s. Okay, so we'll start again at our favorite point that we've grown quite attached to, the rightmost point on the unit circle, 1, 0. This one has an angle of 0. Now take a look at the quarter circle right here. Okay, we're going to cut that in half, like we said, and that gives us an angle of 45 degrees. Okay, so then just keep counting by 45s, and we get 90, 135, 180, 225, 270, 315, 360. So we just added 45 each time. Okay, so now we count by 30s, starting again at 0. 0, 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180, 210, 240, 270, 300, 330, back to 360. Okay, so now we are done with the angles in degrees. Now we'll move on to radian measures. Recall that 2 pi radians is 360 degrees. If I divide that into 8 pieces, that means pi over 4 is 45 degrees. And if I divide it into 12 pieces, I get pi over 6 equals 30 degrees. So notice a couple more patterns. Okay, starting at 0 and adding pi over 4 each time, I get pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, until we get to 8 pi over 4. Do this until you get to 2 pi. Okay, a lot of these reduce. And then start at 0 and add a bunch of pi over 6s. Pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, until you get to 12 pi over 6, which again is 2 pi. Okay, and reduce the ones here also that can reduce. So similar to how we counted up by 45s and then by 30s, we're going to count by pi over 4s and then pi over 6s. And for me, it helps to say the original patterns out loud as I go around the circle, and I reduce them in my head. But you're always welcome to write them off to the side of the paper and reduce them there. Okay, so starting at our favorite point, the first is an angle of 0. We're doing radians now. Count by pi over 4s, or 45 degrees. Pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, reduce it. 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, reduce it. 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4, 8 pi over 4, reduce it. Okay, now let's count up by pi over 6s. Start with 0, pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, we've already done that one though, 4 pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, 8 pi over 6, 9 pi over 6, 10 pi over 6, 11 pi over 6, and 12 pi over 6. And just like that, we are finished, and we have arrived at the complete unit circle. I hope this helped. Thanks for watching.